You are so resilient, and you're unafraid to go after big things. Where do you think that comes from, and how do you keep that and sustain that?
I mean, well, thank you. I mean, I have always been resilient. Part of it comes from, my childhood. I grew up in Brooklyn, extremely poor. And I'll tell a two-part story here. One is starts when I was, in fifth grade. I got called to the front of the class. My teacher, I collected a bunch of money for me to buy new clothes. And I asked him he knew I needed clothes. And so you wearing the same pants for 3 weeks in a row. I was 10. So I went home. My mother said, "Oh, no, no, well, you're fine. It's no big deal." And I went back in my mom's room about 3 hours later, and I come to realize because when you're a kid, you only know what you know. You don't really know what you are. And, I came to the conclusion that, we didn't have the necessary stuff, so I told my mother I was going to go out and get a job on Saturday. Now, if any of those of you that have a 10-year-old, imagine a 10-year-old getting up on his own. And Kings Highway is a long, several-mile strip of stores. And I started from one end to the other. And I found Freddie the Fruit Man was my first job. And it was when I decided not to use my circumstances as an excuse. I think that everybody has a moment of time when you got to just say, hey, this was kind of an unfortunate situation, or this or that, whatever the adversity is. But at 10 years old, I just made a declaration that I would start taking care of myself. And I told my mother if I had some extra money, I would give it to her. And I started working. One of the things my mother always impressed upon me was that you're not poor. Our circumstances are poor. And I think it's really important to realize that sometimes really unfortunate, lousy things, when they happen to you, it doesn't mean that you're not as worthy and not as good as anyone else, but sometimes your circumstances suck. And you can't get confused about the two. And when you have a level of accountability, you can take basically your unfortunate circumstance and turn them into something positive. And that's, to me, I think, where the resilience comes from. I don't think it's a good idea to have a 10-year-old out there on the street by himself, nor could that work right now. But when I look back on it, like, shit, I've been working since I'm 10 years old. And I could tell you so many different stories about stuff that I did in the hustle that would just blow you away. That you knew there was something special going on with me, that I wasn't a normal kid. I wasn't. I mean, as a matter of fact, I was considered a little weird for such a high level of entrepreneurism, from handing out flyers and my scheming around the newspapers, delivering bagels and milk around the neighborhood. But the real turnaround for me was when I went to see my mom, and I told her I wanted a career change. She said, like, "You're 13. Like, I said, "Yeah, but I've been working every day after school. I've been working Saturdays. It's really wearing me down. I want to play sports with my kids, with my friends and everything. And I just want to be with all the other kids." So I went and opened up a paper route. And on this paper route, there was a sign in the window in the store that I signed up. I had 29 dailies. Whoever opened up the most accounts would win a box of candy bars. And I'm like, shit, this is my moment. A box of candy bars was big. To bring that box of candy bars home would have been huge. So I'm hustling. I'm all over the neighborhood now. In Brooklyn, I have these apartment buildings. I'm figuring this is a no-brainer. I'm assuming everyone in this neighborhood needs the paper, and I'm just here to deliver the message. And after about a week, zero, nothing. I go home. I go, "Mom, I don't know what to do." She's like, "You got to be resilient, blah, blah, blah." So I go back, I knock on this older woman's door, and she's like, "No, I don't want to get the paper delivered." She's well in her 70s. And I saw that the paper was she had the paper stacked up in her house. I said, "You get the paper, you get the paper every day. Why not get it from me? It's 8 cents for me, 8 cents from the corner store." She says, "Yeah, but then I got to tip you." And the funny thing is, I go home and I said, "Mom, we got to move out of this neighborhood. These people are so cheap. They don't even want to tip me. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to build this route. This is just terrible." She says, "Sit down. I'm going to tell you something once. I'm going to tell you once only. Stop selling." Huh? Stop selling. If you want to go and sell a product, provide a service, you have to differentiate yourself. You got to start serving and solving. What are you going to do for these people that they can't do for themselves? The definition of value is what you could do for someone that they can't do for themselves. I think, by the way, there's a really, really such an important term that we should be using so much more in business, which is value. What value are you really providing, and how can you enhance the value? And when you enhance value, ultimately will enhance your result. So I go back out and, I go back to the woman and I knock on her door. It's like 10 o'clock at night. She's like, "Are you crazy? What's going on? What's wrong?" I said, "Ma'am, I just need 2 minutes." I said, "If there's a torrential downpour, snowstorm, blizzard, heat wave, a woman such as yourself shouldn't be outside, let alone going to get the paper. If I get you milk and bagels on Sunday and Wednesday, I'll bring the paper every morning, regardless of the weather." She says, "That's so sweet. You do that for me?" I say, "Yeah, I was concerned." And, sure enough, not only did she get the paper delivered, but she was the mayor of the neighborhood. She turned the 29 dailies into 199 dailies and 234 Sundays. And I was just rocking and rolling. And, soon after, I actually got into the bagel business because it was early on in the 70s when bagel stores were starting to really come in. So the guy in the bagel store hired me because he saw I was delivering so many milk and bagels. He taught me how to bake bagels and make bagels. And, the truth of the matter is, Scott, I've been telling that story for about 15 years. It's a true story, and it's actually a worthwhile story because it really is about, are you listening to your customers, or you're just trying to sell them what you're trying to sell them? Because people want to buy what they need, not necessarily what you need to sell. So you got to listen to your customers, and you got to provide value, and you got to differentiate yourself. But what I was thinking about a few months ago is like, how do you really get in the mindset? How do you get in that mindset? Like, I think everyone on this call probably understands the importance of not just selling, but of creating value, service, solving problems. And since that day, I've always been a solution-based salesperson. Like, where's the problem? Running to problems and then trying to see what the solution is, because that's where the white space is. But the question is, how do you get in that mindset? Like, how do you get in the mindset to think about the value proposition, to think about this sort of thing? And this is where I think when I look back, I think this is like where it all started for me. And that is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you really want to do something that's unique and different, you have to turn up your empathy and compassion. And you probably say, well, what's that got to do with anything? But the definition of empathy is really putting yourself in another person's shoes, putting yourself in a common person's shoes. So if you want to increase your entrepreneurism, you need to increase your empathy, which is really putting yourself in other people's shoes. Common shoes is common sense. So coming up with common sense means you got to get out of your head, get out of your mindset, and get into the people you're trying to do business with mindset, and really really get inside of someone else's shoes, which is really the definition of empathy. When you turn it up and you really start looking at things through other people's eyes, not your own eyes, which is what we do with 90% of our time, only then will you see the white space and see the need and see the value and see the solutions that are needed to solve other people's problems. When I think about doing that as a 13-year-old, and I'd like to think that that's really where I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to turn up my empathy, even though I was trying to make a sale. I mean, make no mistake, would do anything and everything. But the thing is, everything starts with compassion and empathy. So how do you turn up your empathy and compassion, get in the mindset so that you can understand what value proposition you need to increase, what solutions you need to solve, and how you can serve? Only best is when you put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yep.
So to be a resilient entrepreneur, you need to turn up the volume on empathy and compassion. And to be a solution-based salesperson, to be a solver, you really have to stop thinking about yourself. I always say, if you want to fill yourself, forget yourself. But it's hard for people because most people are in their own motion picture, their own screenplay, and 99% of the speaking lines and everything's about them. If you actually, you think about it, I think there's like 10,000 thoughts you have in a day or 20,000 thoughts you have in a day. And I would say that 99.9 of them is all about you. And if you can stop and turn up your empathy, turn up your compassion, turn up your ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, your entrepreneurism opportunities will blow up.
Yep.